Hello, Meade County. Welcome back for this week's episode of the Coach Larry Mofield Show. We're going to be taking a look at week 2 of Meade County against E-Town, and then looking forward to this Friday with Apollo. Coach Mofield, thanks for joining us again and taking the time to do this.
Chad, I appreciate it. Anytime we can get positive things about these young men. When you and I talked about this, and I said I'm willing to do it because if we can promote these young men in our program, that's what it's all about. You know, everybody wants to win on Friday night, and it's good to win. You know, we felt good about last week's win, but win or lose, these kids are still here working their rear ends off, and I think sometimes people lose sight of that. You know, sometimes when you don't have success, we have a tendency to get down on the kids. But I'm telling you, these kids are great. They're fun to coach. And, every year is rewarding because you get a chance to work with them. And you know, I've been doing this for a long time, but I still learn a lot from these young men. And so I'm excited about the group of kids we got this year, and I appreciate you doing this.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You've got a great thing going here, and you know, we love our Greenway football. We'll kind of take a look at last week, and you know, in last week's show we kind of talked about possibly being banged up, and you said, yeah, we are, but we don't make excuses. And we came out, for those of us that didn't know what was going on behind the scenes, we came out Friday night, and well, first of all, it was a fiasco just to get on the field, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was, and I talked to a couple of reporters after the game, and the first thing I said, hats off to the kids, because first of all, leading up to the game, the temperatures were terrible last week. So we had to change our practice schedule. We went in the mornings 3 days. Monday, we went in the evening because it's a lighter day and it wasn't as hot. It was still probably lower 90s. And then as the week went on, it got worse. So we went in the morning. So credit to our kids. I'd say our attendance was 98, 99%. Had a few miss. We knew that. So they handled that really, really well. Then we pushed the game back to 8:30, knowing because the heat was going to be bad. Well, we kind of got through that, even though it was going to be right there on the border of us being able to warm up, because we usually warm up an hour before the game. Then the lightning rose in. Well, E-Town hung around. Of course, we were here, and you know, I think people were getting antsy. We didn't know when the game was going to start either. It wasn't like we had some secret that we were holding from everybody, because obviously we want all the fans to stay here. We don't want them to go home. We really are grateful that they came. And a lot of them stayed. I understand some people can't stay that late, but we weren't keeping a secret. After each lightning flash or strike, whatever you call it, you're supposed to wait 30 minutes. Now, there is a radius of so many miles that once it's out of that radius, you can go on. And so anyway, our two trainers, Chad Witzel was our trainer last Friday night, and Miss Carol George, who does an outstanding job. She's head of all the trainers of Baptist East in our area. She's phenomenal. And the decision kind of falls on them. And that's what I tell them. When those decisions come, I give way to the trainer, you know, because we won't do what's best for the kids. Well, anyway, we finally got it in. We played. I thought our kids came out a little slow, but then it didn't take them long to pick it up. I think our kids wanted to play. So anyway, we played, and we had a good game. We were fortunate to get a win. So even when it was over at 12:40, 12:45, we really didn't know what time it was because we were so ecstatic about getting a win.
Well, I went down to the Henderson game the week before, which logistically it was 2 o'clock before you got back at the earliest, because you're 2 hours down there.
Right.
They had the home game, and that's the way it went. And we kind of wondered if they, you know, that's a long time. You get all that adrenaline going, and then you keep getting pushed back. And
kind of a funny side note to that was Coach Kirk said last week, if we won, maybe this is a new way for us to think about practice, because we practiced for an hour and 20 minutes, and we were able to win the game. Another side of that is we really warmed up for about 15 minutes Friday night, and we went out, and both teams had an equal amount of time. And you know, sometimes I think we spend a lot of time maybe doing things we don't need to do. I think 15-minute warm-up, we got a lot done. We got it in. I think the kids were, you know, what's that warm? They warm up pretty easy, and so I don't know. Sometimes maybe we spend too much time doing stuff, and it really comes down to the kids were ready to play. They wanted to play, and they went out and they executed.
Well, You know, last year we went over to E-Town and it kind of came away with a disappointing loss, 35-14. Things didn't really go the way we would have liked, but then came back this year and the boys got a little redemption on that because they turned around and put 41-14, pretty good whooping on them.
Yeah, we actually, not to take anything away from E-Town, but we probably could have, a couple of those possessions could have scored touchdowns instead of those field goals. I think the defining moment for me was probably that drive in the third quarter. You know, sometimes we come out, it's 17-7 at half. We come out, I wouldn't say sloppy or sluggish, but I don't know if we're just quite, have that edge like we do at the beginning of games.
Mm-hmm.
We're a little flat, maybe is a better term. And we didn't Friday night. We came out and we ran the football, and Coach Kirk's our offense coordinator, and we were running a play that we call Indy. And I said, I tell you what Coach French used to tell me, run it till they stop it. And when they stop it, do something else. So basically that's what I told Coach Kirk. I said, run it till they stop it. And then we had sucked them in enough on the play action where we were able to go over top and throw a little pass there. I think we scored on that. But, yeah, our run game was working. Credit to our kids up front. They don't get a lot of credit, You read in the newspaper who carried it a bunch and who caught it a bunch, who threw it a bunch. But those guys up front don't get the credit they deserve. And so I think our offensive line came out ready to play Friday night, and they were able to get some things done up there.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was thinking the same thing. Those guys up front, and as a former skill position, and you too, and with seeing the players, it doesn't matter how skilled your running backs and quarterbacks are. If that line and controlling the line, and we talked about last week. I think you had one. Thomas Fox was about all you had coming back with game experience, and. Boy, they really stepped in there. I think Cruz Redmond ends up with, 122 yards rushing. And you've got one of the really remarkable things, and you might hit on this too, is, all of their play, but then, that center position that's your anchor point. If you can't get that exchange right, and kind of talk about that center y'all got this year.
Jesse Bevan's a sophomore, and he's stepped right in there. And he's done an outstanding job. Backer Robinson's a sophomore who's right beside him. So you got two sophomores starting in 6A football. Then you got a sophomore starting in the backfield in Cruz Redmond. So those three young men have really stepped it up. And I personally think center's maybe the toughest position on the football field. Some people will disagree with that, but it's the people that probably never played center. And the reason is because usually the biggest and the baddest guys right across from you knocking the snot out of you ever play. So Jesse's assumed that role. Jesse doesn't back down. He's not intimidated, and he's cool. He's got level head. And for a sophomore, it's impressive. And he's a great young man too. And all those guys, Backer Robinson and Cruz, they're fun to coach. And the positive thing is, they're around for the rest of this year and 2 more years. So I think that's bodes well for the future of Meade County football, having young men like that. So they're only going to get better. I mean, every game they play, they're going to get better. And you're right. We really kind of had 2 guys returning up there, Ethan Spencer and Thomas Fox. But we started a new right tackle, we started a new left guard, we started a new center, and we started a new quarterback and several receiver positions too. So our offense doesn't have a ton of experience coming back on it. But one thing we do have offensively are some kids that can make some plays. And we're protecting the ball. I think that's a big thing. I don't know how many turnovers we had, but I'm not sure we may not have had any.
Well, that was one of the things I was going to bring up is you totally protected the ball.
Right.
But on the flip side of it, you had 2 fumbles, and Thomas Fox had a fumble recovery. Grant King has a fumble recovery. Then you had Ethan Brandon with the interception and Stone Cruz with the interception. You were kind of talking about last week what an impact like a kickoff return will make in a game, and you might kind of talk about that turnover ratio there.
Yeah, they're big. Those are huge. I mean, they set up short fields. Ironically, it kind of reminded me a little bit what happened to us down at Owensboro Catholic. We turned the ball over 3 times, and it led to 3 short fields, or really it led to 3 instant touchdowns for OCATH. But they would have probably, it would have been tough to keep them out even if it didn't turn into directly 6 at the point of the turnover. But same thing Friday night, in E-Town, when we get those turnovers, we have short fields to go. And our offense has been, we put up 34 points against a good Henderson County team. And we put up 41 Friday night. Potentially could have been a little bit more, but offensively, we're doing some good things. We started a different quarterback Friday night, Bennett Hobbs, and Bennett. If anybody read one of the local newspapers, you probably read in there what I said about Bennett. I said Bennett is the ultimate team player. He did not play quarterback in the first game. He played wide out and had a good game. Comes back the second game, plays quarterback, has a tremendous game. I think he wants to win, and I think that says a lot about who the kind of young man he is. Because I'm telling you, in today's sports and in today's society, there's a lot of me's out there. It's and that's not Bennett. It's about the team, And we talk often about when you can deny yourself and elevate the team. That's when you're a good teammate. And sometimes it's hard because, but he did that, and he had an outstanding game. And one thing that probably hurt us a little bit was when we started him at quarterback, we took him off defense. And he's kind of our quarterback on defense too. We're trying to keep our quarterback from playing defense, and it showed a little bit because we had a couple of misses in the secondary and tackles, and that we got to clean that up because the Durbin kid's an outstanding football player. He probably didn't touch the ball as many times as he wanted to, but when he touched it on jet sweep, and he turned it into 6 real quick, and he's an outstanding player. In my opinion, he's one of the best players in the state of Kentucky. So some people may say, well, Coach, E-Town's 0-2, but I'm telling you, they have some outstanding players over there. It's not they'll find their way, I think. I think they'll get their offense down, and at some point they're going to turn it around and win some games.
Well, talking about the offensive side, like you said, Bennett played a big role in the receiving core down at Henderson. Caught that first touchdown pass from Cade. And then you turn around and he starts at quarterback, and I think that it looks like you've got a pretty deep receiving core because, this week it's Ethan Brandon and Connor Cole stepping up and getting 2 touchdowns in the receiving core. And
I'm going to tell you, Chad, it's pretty fun and I don't mean not to disparage any of our kids and players we've had before, but I'm telling you, there's times we go out there and, it's like you target 1, maybe 2 kids because you feel good. We see these kids all day during the week. Fans see them on Friday night, and they want to know why we're not throwing to Billy, to John, to Bobby. Well, I'm telling you, we know they're auditioning every day of the week. We're not intentionally doing that. Coaches want to win, and kids want to win for the most part. So, but I feel like we've got 5 or 6 kids that can catch the ball. And I feel pretty comfortable with any of them in there. It's and we're going to get a couple of them back from injuries here in the next week or two. That'll be so. We've got depth in those positions. We have depth at the line. We'll end up with some depth at the linebacker position on defense, and hopefully some depth at the secondary. Right now, I'd say our secondary defensive lines area we don't have as much depth in. If we're forced to, we'd have to put Bennett or Cade back there maybe. When they're not playing quarterback to help us, because both those 2 young men can play defense. Cade was on. He played outside linebacker last year, and probably should have been sophomore of the year in the area on defense because he played as good as anybody in the area. In my opinion, I went back and watched the Henderson County game from the playoff game, and Cade was as good as anybody on the field. I felt like so, but. We've got some skill positions now. Obviously, as the year goes on and our schedule ramps up, there's going to be some teams with a lot of skill too. So we'll see how our skill does against them. And then, but yeah, it's exciting when you know that you can do some things and you're not kind of handcuffed because your lack of athleticism and ability to catch the ball. And I feel like this year we've got some kids, and the biggest thing I think, if it holds true, they're not selfish. It's kind of fun in practice. There'll be one of them standing on the sideline because he's not in a rotation, and one of them catches the ball, and they're complimenting each other, And that's when you got that kind of makeup on your team, and I don't think that's a coach thing as much as I think it's where some of these kids are brought up. They're brought up in unselfish environments, and they're able to elevate others above themselves. You know, when you can do that, and I think football is kind of the ultimate sport for that, in my opinion. I guess I'm partial. I've done it for so long. So.
Well, and kind of talking about the injuries, or lack thereof injuries on this end of it, talking defensively, the King boy, got a little scared with him down at Henderson County. He comes back into the defense this week, and then last week, and then you also get Wyatt Rainey back.
Yeah.
And here they ended up for the night. I think Wyatt led with 12 tackles, and King Grant.
Yeah.
He's got 11 tackles and a fumble recovery, I think was what it was.
Yeah, those two young men, I mean, that's a blessing to coach both those two. Grant, I've known Grant for a long time. He played on my son Braden's youth team and on the Cowboys. And Grant, I could tell from an early age he loved the game and he loved to hit. And that's something that's, you know, I don't know. I could just see it because when we were coaching the youth league, I told him, I said, keep your helmet up, keep your face up, because he loved to hit. And he'd lead with his head, and I think it's just because he's so aggressive. Well, you're right. We had a little scare with him week one. We were concerned that he may have had a lower leg injury that could have kept him out for a while, but it ended up being more of a bruise. He came back and really week two had a tremendous game. He's a great kid, comes from a good family, and he wants to please. He's also he's very coachable, and he wants to win. And he's another kid that, you know, he could play some offense too. I mean, I think, you know, right now we're able to rest him a little bit on offense because we've got some kids in those spots, and so he can devote a lot of his time defensively. So he had a heck of a game last week against E-Town. And Wyatt Rainey, you know, Wyatt had a setback in the spring. We didn't even know if he'd play this year. I mean, in fact, we kind of went into the summer thinking that he you know, and part of us was like, hey, we know we got him for 2 years after this year. But then I told Wyatt, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one, but when he sustained his setback, his injury, I told him, I said, there's one thing that the doctors can't predict. They're going to give you the medical diagnosis, and they're going to tell you what the possibilities and probabilities are of you playing, because that's their job. But the human spirit and human determination, they can't put a timetable on. They can't. There's no way to measure that. And Wyatt's determination is off the chart, and his work ethic's off the chart. So when he got the news he was coming back, you know, it didn't surprise me, but just because of who he is, you know. Now, obviously, there's some other factors in there. You know, I'm not going to discount some factors that I believe helped him too, but just his spirit and desire and determination, and I think his positive attitude. I think he probably was a little down at first, but I think, you know, he didn't stay down, and that's another thing I think playing football lends itself to. I mean, a kid like Wyatt, he's been in tough situations before on the football field. He goes out there, something happens to him. Well, if he drops his head, he's going to drop it for a few seconds, and then that's it. And he's done with it. He's ready to move on. He's ready to focus on the task. That's what got him back. I think that's part of what got him back. So, yeah, him coming back is huge for our defense. Eventually, if everything goes well, we may work him back into some offense too. But right now, we want to start him slow.
Yeah, and I guess it wouldn't be right to not talk about some of our seniors, and we've already talked about Bennett, but you know, we were talking about Cruz having a great night running for 126 yards, but his brother Stone, which is a senior, had a great night. He had 5 carries, 3 of which are touchdowns, and then on defense he had a big interception.
It's kind of funny. On one of those touchdowns, we had to take Cruz out. I don't know if we got blood on him or something. He came out of the game, and then the next play, Stone gets a carry and scores. Cruz kind of said, "Happens to me again," you know. So the good thing is those two can go home and fuss about it stuff.
Because that happened down in Hart County too, didn't it?
Yeah, but Stone's been an outstanding player. There's a nice article about him in a local paper a couple weeks ago that they came over and did. It was exciting to see our kids get some notoriety and publicity, and then I think he played well. I think Ethan Brandon's been playing well too. Ethan Brandon's a senior that's battled through some physical some injuries the last couple of years, but he's gotten off to a hot start for us. He's another one of those wide out slots, secondary, that's made some plays. So yeah, we don't have a lot of seniors, Chad, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of last year. There's not a lot of them, but the ones we have are very impactful.
Contributed.
And,
well, I was going to say, Ethan Brandon also had a big momentum shift there in the first half, getting that first interception on defense.
Yeah, he's I guess I'd say a baller maybe. He kind of has got some savvy. He knows where to be, and he's pretty coachable. He's not afraid to stick his nose in there either. I mean, when one of these big old backs is barreling down the field, he's not afraid to stick it in there. So Aiden Malay's been another senior that played really well for us in the first game. It's going to be out for maybe a little while, but man, Aiden's another one. He's a tough son of a gun. I mean, he's not afraid to come up there and smack you in. And people talk about size in football. I don't know exactly how much Aiden weighs, but now he is pretty strong for size. But man, he comes in, he hits you, and he's not very big. I mean, and he's able to compete in 6A football at a pretty dang high level. And but anyway, yeah, we got some impactful seniors. We're fortunate.
And I guess the last thing I've got on the game before we move on, unless you have something, is talk about the guy that had a good night but may really come back to help us in future situations was Nolan Poole. He had his 5 extra point, kicking his extra points, but then got a chance to kick 2 field goals, and especially as we get into some of these district games, that having a good field goal kicker could come in real handy.
Yeah, he's got a lot of potential. We challenged him this summer to go to some camps. Kickers at the high school level, really at all levels, they're kind of on their own a lot. Most people don't have a kicking coach. They have a special teams coach. They don't have just a guy that works with kickers. So kicker's a little bit like you got to go out and kind of do some stuff on your own. I think he did that. Obviously, I think his number one sport is soccer, and he's a good soccer player. But we're able to get him some over here, and if we can get him to start getting that thing closer to the end zone, I think down the road that's going to be huge. I think he's got a strong enough leg, at some point to kick 40, 50-yard field goals, but he's got to continue to work at it. We don't get him as much as we'd like. But, yeah, you're right. That's the reason in one or two of those situations we probably could have gone for it. But I think more importantly, you got to look down. At one point, we're going to need those. Yeah. So you need to put him in the fire, let him get in there and kick them, and he did a good
Everybody
job.
Hollering and screaming.
And Coach Trotter does a great job. I think I've said this before with our special teams. Doesn't get the time that he needs, always gets the short end of the stick, has to deal with the revolving door, because what happens when a kid gets tired that plays both ways, the first thing you want to come out on is the punt team or the kickoff team. And he has to, get a guy in there that may not quite be ready to play yet, but he's going to have to go in there and play a couple of plays because somebody needs a break, So, and he handles it well. Coach Trotter's got a good demeanor for that, and he's done a good job in that area for us.
Okay. Well, so, after that heartbreaker down at Henderson, came back this past week, had a big win. Maybe talk about what we're looking at for this Friday against Apollo, getting the boys refocused to go against the Apollo team that's we're no strangers.
No, we haven't had a lot of success against them. In fact, Chad, kind of one thing I've talked a lot about to the kids is last year we got beat 55-54. 54 points wasn't enough to beat them. So this year, we've got to come out, we got to play 48 minutes. And we got to play hard. They have some players. Their quarterback's a young kid. He's a sophomore, but he can throw it, but he can also tuck it and run. That gave us some problems last year. They're aggressive on defense. They play a 3-4 on defense. They like to bring their outside linebacker some. They got a safety that's pretty good, an inside linebacker that's pretty good. So they'll present us with some problems. But, I think for us, Apollo's the next game, and it's the most important game on schedule because it's the next game. It's Friday night, but we have to continue to get better. We can't live on what we did at E-Town. We're gonna. This, and I think most fans that know a little about football know that our schedule continues to get difficult. You know, it doesn't get any easier. So Apollo presents a problem. They're 0-2, but you know, they played Owensboro Catholic, and we played Owensboro Catholic, and you know, Owensboro Catholic's a good football team. In fact, they got maybe all the quarterback who's Mr. Football in the state of Kentucky at some point. He's really good, the Atwell kid. So they're no slouch. McCracken County beat Apollo. They're no slouch. So sometimes an 0-2 record is deceptive. Apollo's better than their record. Coach Edge does a great job coaching. And it's his son who plays quarterback. I know Paul Bates, who's an assistant down there. He's an outstanding coach too himself. He was a former head coach down there for a while. They'll be ready to play. They'll be excited, and I think you know, there's no Apollo team that's going to come up here and lay down for Meade County. We're going to have to fight for 48 minutes to try to win a football game.
Well, it looks like you're going to have a little bit cooler temperatures this week to contend with. So,
yeah, I think maybe we're, you know, at least this week we might be back to a little bit more normalcy. It was unbelievable practicing this week and with low 80s, breeze blowing. The mornings have been cool. I think next week holds a little bit warmer, but we try to focus on now. You know, we'll take care of now, and then we'll worry about next week when next week comes. But we're looking forward to the game with Apollo, and we tell our kids it's another opportunity. You know, there are very few of them in a football season, and I think that's what makes it a unique sport. You don't go play 30 games like you do in baseball or basketball. You're guaranteed 11 regular season or 10 regular season and 1 playoff game and 2 scrimmages. So that's 13 opportunities you got. Now you could get more, but you're not. You know, that's it. You know, unless you earn yourself more. So anyway, each one of them are precious. And once the season starts, I told the kids as soon as we scrimmaged OCAT, I said this is going to be, next thing you know, it'll be November, December. Let's don't live in regret land saying what if we could have done this, you know. So and this bunch of young men so far have been very fun to coach. I mean, they show up, they work, they seem to like each other. There seems to be a good chemistry on the team, and we've had some guys step in and do some things that, you know, I think Tyler Smallwood's another senior I didn't mention. I think Jacob Adams, and you know, those 2 young men are not young men at the beginning of the year. We would say, hey, you're going to be maybe starting, but they did. They've started. Jacob Adams started against Henderson County. Tyler Smallwood started, and they're contributing on this football team now. And you need guys. You're going to need them sometimes to start. Sometimes you'll need them as backups. But biggest thing is we need them. We need all 50 guys that are on this football team.
Yeah. Well, we wish you the best of luck Friday night.
I appreciate it, Chet. And again, thanks for your coverage.
Oh, well, we appreciate you taking the time, and we encourage everybody to make sure you get down here to Death Valley, Hamilton Field on Friday night, and support our Meade County Green Waves as they go out on the field against Apollo, and hopefully make it 2 straight victories here before they go back out on the road. Thank y'all for joining us.